ko kung mawakan ako. Dili.
Darwin.
Kaluoy niya, uy. Kibuwakan siya sa yangin ni Kukma. Nihilakin taon siya. Darwin, ayaw paghilak, uy. Gwapo manggod ka o gusto pagit ka sa barog. Napay laing nangandoy ni Mukwed.
Uy, ingkatadang lira. Nang stok na sadkas man nagkikugmaay nga taga-kalibutan, no?
Engkantadang Hilda, naluoy kay kuanang Darwin. Puutan manggod siya. Dili siya angay nga pasakitan.
May pawaan ka ni amang mitrano na. Bantay lang yun ka ba? Malintian ka, cute. Aw, mapagan pa yun ko, ani. Kikita man maoy ni ading hi.
Maluoy manggod kuanang tawanan ko, Hilda.
Ay, lagyan taon pa daw si mong kibati. Uy, lira.
Lo, naluoy ramang ko niya, Kuid. Ikaw sad ba maninuod sad kit ka?
Ay, nakailan na taon kay ko nimo. Pero ikatambag lang yun ako, di mo, no? Ayaw kitin taon pa da. Kay man naglahi mo kalibutan anak niya. Inkantadang lera.
Hustos engkantadang Hilda. Dili na mao kining pagpati ko ngadto sa usa ka kalibutanon. Dili na siya malaksi sa akong kaisipan. Niasa din niya sa kundukan. O dili masabot ang pagpati ko ngadto niya. Mahal nga bathala nga naman Manong ni bati man ko ini. Nga naman.
Josing, ato atong amigo ni mo kay tingali og malisuan tos mayong pag-isip.
Sa? Kaya nga lang na si Bay Darwin, nandun na.
Gibuwagan ni Helen, labihang nakatiapaw.
Uy! Nakabantay ka nandun na?
Wa ko kabantay.
Awa di eh. In love si Bay Darwin sa iyang uyab nga si Helen.
Wow, kana nakabantay ko ana.
Ah,
Unya ikaw nakabantay sa kaga si Helen gusto pa magtagbaw sa iyang pagkadaga.
awo! Oh! Kabantay ko na nandun na, uy!
Ato atong amigo ni mo Josing, ikay am-am ato.
Ano bang niyaman ka sa amo, Bay Jusing?
Emong mamanura ang nagsulti nako, Bay Darwin.
Nagsulti nga, unsa man.
Gibuwagan ko kang Helen. Nya, labihan ko.
Pagagis.
Dili ko kalakaw oy. Tanaw ra ko nang kuan pa sa kuan oy, diabetes. Gani oh. Oh.
Dasing, Bay Darwin. Dasing lang.
Dasing.
Matibay, matibay.
Kasakit yun, uy. Mahal yun ay kaya na ko siya. Kaya mo naman og gilusak ang akong duga sa kasakit sa among panagbuwag. Darwin po, uy. Ayaw pagsugot nga, dayo na kining atong panagbuwag. Ayaw sugot ba? Please.
Mas mayong nagkabuwag mo si Darwin.
Kaya naman, Papa Virgilio.
Ayaw na tinguha pa nga may balik ang kaning kamo, Helen. Tungod ay, nanawag si Sir Pulsiano ang tagiya sa gitika na tuyuta.
Unsa ba yan tuyo, Papa Virgilio? Gamito na ba niya ang gitika ni Muyuta pa?
Dili, oy. Inoon na siya gi-offer ni mong trabaho dito sa syudad.
Tinuod bitaw ka pa?
Manawag to siya og balik ko niyang gabi. Aron sunahon kami mismo kung interesado ka ba yun.
Sige pa mo trabaho ko. Buutan man sab si Sir Ponciano. Unsa man sa trabaho apa?
Juan, tigirip pa ko ng amahong. Olingon niya.
Kuan pa. Ako lang sa nanguna-unaon pa, uy. Pa Virgilio?
Amahang Medrano?
Unsay akong ikalagad kanimo. Engkantadang lira.
May iyang iunta ko nimo, ama.
Unsay ka na? Sige, sulte.
Gusto na kong masuroy sa kalibutan sa mga mortal.
Isprekitek. Unsa?
Amahang Medrano pa, sige na. Bisan ko sa makadiyot lang.
Salbakuta. Kung sa kiat-kiat lang nga katuyuan. No, bad na. Balibaran ko ikaw. Apan! Kung maayo ang imong tumong. Aw, mahimo rasab ka na natong panagsultihan.
Gusto kong makita ko na unsa na ang kalikupan sa gawas nining atong ingkantuhanong kalibutan, ama.
Interesado ako niya ng maong hisgotanan. Kabantay ka na. Kaya ang kinabuhi sa duha ka managlahi nga kalibutan, nagdepende sa kahimtang sab sa ilang kalikupan.
Unya kantadang lira. Miuyon ba si Amahang Medrano sa imong gihangyo?
Uwa pa noon, pero matod pa niya. Iya pa ko nung una-unaon, engkantadang Hilda.
May ipangutana lang ko nimo ha. Ay, nagkalain.
Sige, pangutana lang. Di lagi ko malain. Unsa madiunta na, ha?
Unsa may tinuod yun nimong tumong sa pagsuroy dito sa kalibutan sa mga mortal? Si Darwin, no? Naktuo ba yagid ko nga ang kwapo nga Darwin mo ay gusto nimong makita sa personal, Lira? Gusto ko, dili ba? Gusto ko, no?
Engkantadang Hilda.
The summer of 1665 was the hottest anyone could remember. The Thames shrank between its banks, exposing mudflats that baked in the sun. In the narrow streets of St. Giles in the Fields, just outside London's ancient walls, a woman named Margaret Pontius fell ill. She developed a fever. Then came the headache, sharp, splitting. Within hours, a soft swelling appeared in her armpit. Her husband called for a searcher of the dead. An elderly woman paid pennies by the parish to examine bodies. The searcher pressed the bubo with her thumb, felt its heat, and knew. Margaret Pontius died on April 12th. The parish clerk wrote plague in his ledger. That single word changed everything. Because once the plague entered a house in 17th century London, that house became a tomb. The authorities nailed the door shut from the outside, painted a red cross above the frame, and added the words, "Lord, have mercy upon us." Margaret's husband and children were locked inside with her corpse for 40 days. The watchman stood guard outside to ensure no one escaped. This was the law. This was how London fought the plague. By September, 7,000 people were dying every week. To understand what London lost, you must first see what it was. The London of 1665 was not the industrial behemoth of later centuries, but it was already the heart of England's maritime empire. Nearly 500,000 people crowded into a space the Romans would have recognized. A walled city barely 2 miles across, surrounded by sprawling suburbs called the Liberties. The riverfront was chaos. Thames Street ran along the water, lined with warehouses stacked with pitch, tar, brandy and oil. The wharves reeked of fish and tar and rotting seaweed. Ships arrived daily from Hamburg, Amsterdam and the Levant, their holds filled with spices, silk and news from the wider world. Stevedores hauled cargo while watermen ferried passengers across the river in wherries, shouting obscenities at each other in a language unique to the Thames. The streets were narrow, deliberately so. Upper stories of timber-framed houses jutted out over the lanes, creating shaded tunnels where the sun never reached the cobblestones. Open drains called kennels ran down the centre of each street, carrying animal waste, kitchen slops, and the contents of chamber pots toward the river. The stench was overwhelming. Visitors from the countryside would press handkerchiefs soaked in vinegar to their noses. But London was also magnificent. The newly restored King Charles II held court at Whitehall Palace. The great Gothic bulk of St. Paul's Cathedral dominated the skyline, though its steeple had been struck by lightning decades earlier. In Cheapside, goldsmiths displayed their wares in shop windows glazed with expensive glass. Booksellers clustered around St. Paul's churchyard, selling everything from Bibles to seditious pamphlets. Coffee houses had begun to appear, filled with merchants arguing about ships and sugar prices. The population was stratified with brutal precision. Wealthy merchants lived in stone houses near the Royal Exchange. Artisans, weavers, tailors, shoemakers occupied the middle ranks, living above their workshops in the tangle of streets around Cripplegate and Aldersgate. Below them were the labourers, the street sellers, the coal heavers and water carriers, and below them the desperately poor, crammed into tenements in the Liberties where entire families shared single rooms. The city was connected by sound. Church bells marked the hours. Street criers announced goods for sale: fresh mackerel, pot pies, milk from the cow, the hammering of blacksmiths, the sawing of carpenters, the rumble of carts on stone. London was loud, crowded, filthy, and alive. Then the heat came, and the rats began to die. The plague did not announce itself with trumpets. It crept through the western Liberties in April and May, killing a few people here, a family there. The bills of mortality, weekly lists of deaths compiled by parish clerks, showed small numbers at first. 9 deaths from plague in the first week of May, 14 in the second. The wealthy paid little attention. Plague was a disease of the poor, everyone knew. It struck the overcrowded tenements, the dark alleys, the places respectable people never visited. But the numbers kept rising. 28 deaths in early June, 43 the next week. Suddenly it was no longer confined to St. Giles. The infection moved eastward, jumping from parish to parish like fire through dry timber. By the end of June, the bills recorded over 200 plague deaths. That was when the exodus began. King Charles II left London on July 27, relocating his court to Hampton Court and eventually Oxford. He was followed by the aristocracy, who shuttered their townhouses and fled to country estates. Then came the merchants, the lawyers, the physicians. The College of Physicians, the city's most learned medical men, abandoned London almost to a man. Of the 79 licensed doctors practicing in the city, only 3 remained. For those with money, escape was possible. But a seat on a wagon leaving London cost 5 shillings, more than a labourer earned in a week. And even if you had the fare, the countryside was hostile. Villages posted armed men on their roads, turning back Londoners with threats of violence. You needed a certificate of health from your parish, and parishes stopped issuing them as the death toll mounted. The poor were trapped. They watched the rich flee and knew they had been abandoned. The law courts closed. Parliament adjourned to Oxford. The theatres shut their doors. The mechanisms of government, commerce and justice simply stopped functioning. What remained was a skeleton administration. The Lord Mayor, a handful of aldermen, and the parish officials tasked with enforcing the nightmare to come. By late July, London had become unrecognisable. Grass grew in the streets around Whitehall Palace. The Thames was nearly empty of boats. The Navy kept its ships away from the pestilential city. The constant roar of urban life had given way to an oppressive, melancholic silence, broken only by the tolling of bells. The authorities had enacted draconian plague orders based on a simple, brutal logic: isolate the sick to save the healthy. When plague struck a household, that household was sealed. Everyone inside, sick and healthy alike, was locked in for 40 days. A watchman was posted at the door day and night, armed with a halberd. He brought food and water, carried messages, and reported deaths. He also prevented escape. The psychological horror of this policy cannot be overstated. Families were imprisoned in hot, cramped tenements during the hottest summer in memory. They shared space with dying relatives, then with corpses that could not be removed until the dead cart made its rounds. The smell was unbearable. Rotting food, putrefying bodies, human waste. Windows were kept shut because people believed night air spread the plague. Some tried to escape. They drugged their watchmen with brandy or wine. They bribed them with whatever they had left of value. They hacked through the plaster and lath walls of their houses, fleeing through neighbours' yards under cover of darkness. Samuel Pepys, the naval administrator whose diary provides our most vivid account of the plague year, recorded the shrieks of women and children coming from locked houses, a sound so frequent it pierced the stoutest heart. The enforcement of quarantine relied on a grim hierarchy of parish officials. Searchers of the dead, usually poor, elderly women, were hired to examine corpses and determine the cause of death. They were notoriously unreliable. Many were illiterate. Most had no medical training. Families bribed them to record deaths as spotted fever or consumption instead of plague, desperate to avoid the 40-day lockdown. The searchers themselves often contracted the disease and died within days. The streets became a landscape of avoidance. People walked down the centre of lanes to avoid the walls where sick people might lean. They refused to shake hands. They stopped visiting each other entirely. The normal courtesies of urban life, greetings, conversations, the simple acknowledgement of another person's existence, disappeared. When two people met on the street, they would turn their faces away and hurry past. The sensory experience of the city had transformed. The dominant sound was bells, a constant monotonous tolling that announced each new burial. By August, there were so many dead that the bells rang day and night. Eventually, the authorities banned them, fearing they would spread panic. The dominant smell was smoke. Bonfires burned on street corners, fueled by pitch and sulphur, supposedly to cleanse the corrupted air. People carried nosegays of herbs, rosemary, rue, wormwood, pressed to their faces. Samuel Pepys bought rolled tobacco to chew, hoping it would ward off infection. At night, the dead carts came. They moved through the streets with torches, the drivers calling out, "Bring out your dead." Bodies were piled onto the carts, sometimes 40 or 50 in a single load, and hauled to the burial grounds beyond the walls. The great plague pits at Moorfields were 40 feet long and 20 feet wide, dug deep into the London clay. Bodies were stacked in layers covered with thin dustings of lime.
May magic ang kamay ni Mommy. Pagkahaplos, umubuti po ang ubo at sipon ko.
Hindi ito magic. It's Vicks Vapor Rub. I-haplos sa dibdib para sa ubot sipon at sa likod para sa sakit ng katawan. Haplos ng Vicks, all night ginhawa.
Liana, stop! Liana, stop!
Can't stop finger combing my hair with my new Palmolive Naturals. Now, with 2 times coconut cream concentrate. Advanced dual action formula hydrates hair and seals in moisture. For up to 24-hour lush and smooth hair, you can't stop finger combing. Try the new Palmolive Naturals.
Liana, stop!
Naku! Tinapos ang pambili sa pangsigang? Sakto! Pwede ka nang humiram ng as low as 100 pesos sa G-Loan Sakto. Napakadali